Hello everyone, this is Shannon from That's So Poe, and today I'm doing a series review of the Books of Ambha duology by Tasha Suri. This is a Mughal India inspired desert fantasy series that I think is absolutely fantastic. There's so much about this that I really love, so I want to talk to you about why you should pick it up. So let me start with what each book is about, beginning with the first book in the series, Empire of Sand. This follows Meher, who is the daughter of an imperial Ambhan governor. She, however, is also Amrithi. Amrithi are a desert people who have a lot of magic, and on her mother's side, she has inherited that, but it is very much a secret because the Amrithi are persecuted in the Ambhan Empire. However, one day it becomes apparent that she has this magic, and the empire takes her away in order to sort of make use of her magical skills. The second book, Realm of Ash, follows Arwa, Meher's younger sister, who is raised by her father and her stepmother to become a perfect Ambhan noblewoman, suppressing all of her Amrithi culture. However, after she grows up and marries well, she loses everything when a massacre on her town kills her husband and everyone else, and she becomes a widow. Widows are very much not valued in Ambhan society, but she needs to find purpose, so she offers her services to the empire, her magical Amrithi blood, to help when there's an imbalance in terms of the power and magic in the empire. So these two books in the duology are actually a little bit more of companion novels than direct sequels. Empire of Sand does occur 10 years before Realm of Ash, so there are some chronological things that happen, some things that happen in terms of the empire that do follow through from one to the other, but because they're companion novels, truthfully you could read it in either order and it would be fine. This review is going to be a series review, so talking about what I liked across both of these books, but I'm going to link below a couple of standalone reviews for each of these books. So for Empire of Sand, Jocelyn at Yogi with a Book, Joe at FinalBlowJoe, and Isabella at Stubbornly Bookish all have standalone reviews, and Isabella at Stubbornly Bookish also has a review of Realm of Ash. So all of those are linked below if you want more details about each book. I really enjoyed both of the books in this duology, although Empire of Sand had a couple of minor issues in terms of a little bit of extra drama and some slightly illogical choices by characters, whereas Realm of Ash was pure perfection for me. But I think that each person has sort of a different opinion on each of these books. I still think that both are absolutely excellent. So what I want to talk about now is all of the reasons why this series as a whole I thought was just so worth picking up. Starting with the world building. There is so much world building that is going on in this series, and that world building is both cultural and political as well as magic based. So in terms of the culture and politics, we follow the Ambhan Empire, which is something that is inspired by Mughal Empire in India. The Mughal Empire was in the 16th through 19th centuries, where some groups from Central Asia invaded a lot of the different kingdoms in India. India had many different kingdoms, all of which had different cultures and different groups of people. And it sort of united in an imperial way the land. So a lot of this story is focusing on the Ambhan Empire, which is one that has a lot of culture, but also a lot of brutality in the way that it has subjugated other peoples. It has a lot of very intricate court politics, a lot of rules as far as things like women need to be really demure. There's a lot of separation of women and men. There is a one true religion where the Maha, who is the religious leader, and the emperor are considered almost deities. So there's a lot of fascinating things about the empire itself. And we also get a lot of perspective about the Amrithi people, because both of the sisters, Meher and Arwa, their mother was Amrithi, which is a desert tribal nomadic people, very different culture, a lot of focus on their religion, which is a separate type of religion, their magic, their beliefs. And I loved the way that the Ambhan Empire and the Amrithi people are sort of very distinct and described in this world building. The magic system in these books is also just completely fascinating, and I love the way that it has been inspired by Indian culture. So in these books, the Amriti worship these things called daivas, which are desert spirits. And the reason that they worship them is because they are related by blood. The daiva are, in a sense, their ancestors as well, and they are able to call on the power of the daiva through a lot of different rites. Many of these rites are done through dance, and I loved this aspect of the book. So the dance that they do is inspired by Bharatanatyam. I'll put a clip up here of what Bharatanatyam looks like, and I will link the video below that I grabbed that clip from. It is just the coolest dance. It is an actual dance that is a religious dance. It is done to tell religious stories, and it has been done for centuries by priestesses. And I love that that was the way that the Amriti people communicate with and worship the daivas. Completely unique and wonderful. There's also the realm of ash, which was especially explored in the second book, which is sort of this world where the ancestors' spirits live, their families' ancestors, and where they can gain some of the knowledge of those ancestors. It is a completely different feel and really desolate and bleak but beautiful, and I loved that magic system as well. One of the things that I will warn is that a lot of the magic in this is blood magic. So what the sisters have to do is often cut themselves in order to bleed as a sacrifice to the spirits. So if you're not comfortable with blood magic, this may not be for you, but I didn't think that it was too much. I think that I'm very sensitive to anything too bloody, and this really wasn't it. But I thought that the magic system was just really, really fascinating and so well done. Next, I want to talk about the pacing and the writing style. So both of these books do have very strong plots where there are a lot of high stakes and a lot of consequences in terms of politics and magic for what they're doing, and there is a big goal in mind in each story. But they are very much also internally focused. So a lot of these stories are just focused on the atmosphere, on the internal emotional world, and they're very, very slow paced, which is perfect for me because I love slow paced fantasy. This is extremely atmospheric in the way that you feel what the characters are feeling, and you feel the magic and you feel the world around you. But if you're somebody who likes a fast pace, this may not work for you. For me, as a slow paced reader, it was perfect. The romance in this was also perfect for me because it was incredibly sweet and slow burn. In both of these books, the sisters fall in love, and the person that they each fall in love with is such a gentle and kind and considerate and compassionate hero. They each fall in love with a man who is somewhat tragic in terms of a lot of trauma experienced, but somebody who is very caring and loving and a good partner for them. And I love that focus on a slowly developing friendship and trust and relationship that leads to true partnership. I adored the way that the romances worked in these books. I also loved the incredibly feminist focus on women in these stories. So obviously we have these two sisters who are each the center of their stories, but really so much of both of these books is focused on women, their relationships, and their value. So we have such a strong sisterly bond between Meher and Arwa, but we also have bonds that they have with older women mentors, which I absolutely love seeing. They have such a focus on women understanding their own value, especially when they are treated by society as if they don't have value, such as both of them for being of Amriti blood, which is extremely oppressed and subjugated in the society, and especially Arwa, who is a widow and considered almost a ghost of society. She has no more value now that her husband is no longer alive. And I loved the way that it was just such a feminist take of exploring how women do have value and how their relationships matter and how they matter. Another very complex type of relationship that is explored in these books is that of parents and daughters. So because Meher and Arwa are half Amrithi, and their father is Amban and their stepmother is Amban, it causes a lot of very conflicted issues and emotions for them, especially for Arwa, who is taken in by their stepmother and raised as her own, but raised very much to push down all of the Amrithi parts of her. There is so much in this about how parental love can often not be as healthy as it should be. The father in this is very weak. Even though he loves his daughters, he doesn't always make the right decisions. And the stepmother, although perhaps motivated to protect, is in many ways harming the daughters. So I really liked that complexity, especially in the realm of Ash, between the parent and daughter relationships. On a broader societal level, I love the way that this book explored the ideas of prejudice. Because the Amhan Empire is seen as this great thing, and the Amrithi people are seen as backwards and lesser than, there's a lot of discussion of the prejudice between the Amhan Empire for the Amrithi people, especially because the Amrithi people are very different in culture and also very different in appearance. The Amrithi people have darker skin and curlier hair. It's really interesting to read both of these novels because Meher is physically very obviously Amrithi. She has the darker skin and the curly hair, whereas Arwa is passing. She has lighter skin and straight hair. And so there's a lot of discussion of sort of racism and colorism and this idea of Arwa passing and what that costs her to pass as Amhan when she is also Amrithi. And so I love that really complex discussion of prejudice. And lastly, one of my favorite things that these books did was the exploration of imperialism. This is such a fascinating topic, and I think that it was dealt with the complexity that it deserves in these novels. Often when you read fantasy or sci-fi, you have these grand empires, but it's not always discussed with the kind of nuance that I think that is done in the Books of Ambha series. So in this series, we are both seeing sort of the glory of the Amhan Empire as well as the cost, the genocide that is enacted against the Amrithi people, the way that they are subjugated, the way that the empire uses and takes all of their magic and their resources, but also when the Amhan Empire starts to crumble, the cost of that, the cost of what happens after an empire has come in, if it then dissolves, it is also filled with so many problems. And I loved the way that that is discussed. I also really loved in Realm of Ash the way that Arwa has this complicated relationship between her Amrithi roots as well as her Amhan upbringing and culture. She feels so connected to the Amhan Empire even though she is discriminated against by it. And that complexity of connection and emotion I thought was done so well. Overall, I think that the Books of Ambha duology is fantastic. I think that this is such a great example of very slow, atmospheric fantasy that is focused on women, that is focused on interesting issues, constantly looking at ideas of culture and of imperialism, questioning the ways that we form our identities and how we conform to society and what we buck. I really loved all of the themes in this. The characters were fantastic. The magic was beautiful. Really such a great series. If you guys have read either of these books, if you have any thoughts, any comments, if you're planning to read this, anything at all, just go ahead and leave me a comment down below.